The conference room was cold, not just in temperature, in feeling. White walls, fluorescent lights, a long table that smelled like polished wood and old secrets. My mother sat at the head of it, dressed in black, dabbing her eyes with a tissue she hadn't needed once since the funeral. My sister Victoria sat beside her, back straight, lips pressed into a careful line, the expression of someone trying very hard to look grieved when they are actually very, very eager. I sat at the far end, alone. The lawyer, a thin man named Mr. Gerald Holt, cleared his throat and opened the folder in front of him. He read my mother's name first, then Victoria's. Numbers followed. Large ones, numbers that made my mother exhale slowly, like she had been holding her breath for years. Then he looked up, adjusted his glasses, and said, with the practiced neutrality of a man who had delivered bad news before, "And for Claire, the estate leaves nothing further." Victoria's smile broke through before she could stop it. My mother looked out the window. Neither of them looked at me. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I simply sat there, hands folded, staring at the table, because my father had always said that the quietest person in the room sees everything, and I had just seen enough. But Mr. Holt had not yet closed the folder. My name is Claire, and for most of my life, I was the daughter my family forgot to mention, not because I was invisible, but because I was inconvenient. Victoria was everything my mother wanted in a daughter: charming, loud, decorative. She laughed at the right moments. She wore the right clothes. She said, "Mom, you look beautiful at family dinners," even when no one asked. My mother lit up around her, the way a lamp lights up a room, immediate, effortless, total. I was different. I asked too many questions. I spent too much time reading. I once corrected my father's math at the dinner table when I was 9 years old, and the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know about my place in that house. I remember being 12, winning a school essay competition. First place. My name in the local newspaper. I came home holding that paper like it was something precious. My mother glanced at it, said, "That's nice, Claire," and turned back to helping Victoria rehearse for a dance recital. I folded the newspaper and kept it. I still have it somewhere. That was the pattern. Victoria performed. I achieved. Victoria was celebrated. I was tolerated. It wasn't cruelty, not the kind you can point to. It was something quieter and harder to name. It was being loved just slightly less, consistently, for your entire life. When my father passed 8 months ago, I grieved in the way I did everything, quietly, privately, without asking anyone to witness it. He and I had our own language: long walks, old books, conversations about history and ethics over bad coffee. He saw me in ways my mother never bothered to try. I thought his passing was the hardest thing I would face. I had no idea what was coming. But I was about to find out how wrong they all were. The will reading had been scheduled 3 times and postponed twice. My mother always had a reason. She wasn't feeling well, the lawyer was unavailable, she needed more time to process. 8 months of delays. 8 months of vague answers when I asked about the estate. I should have known then. When the day finally came, I drove myself. No one offered to pick me up. No one called to check if I was coming. I arrived 4 minutes early and found my mother and Victoria already seated, already talking in low voices that stopped the moment I walked through the door. Mr. Holt read the will methodically. My mother received the family home, a 4-bedroom house in Riverside that my father had built himself in his 30s. She also received his investment accounts, totaling just over $4.2 million. Victoria received the vacation property in Colorado, a separate savings bond portfolio, and Mr. Holt paused here, as if even he found the number significant, a directed inheritance of $30 million from a private trust my father had reportedly established in her name. $30 million. I sat very still. Mr. Holt then looked at me and read the line that had apparently been inserted into the revised will 14 months ago, 14 months before my father passed, during a period when he was already ill, already dependent, already isolated from me by a series of misunderstandings my mother had carefully engineered. Claire receives no further portion of the estate. No explanation, no letter, no acknowledgement that I existed as anything more than a name to be crossed out. Victoria glanced at me from across the table. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The look on her face said it all. I won, and you never even knew we were competing. My mother reached over and touched Victoria's hand. I looked down at my own hands. Empty. What broke me wasn't the money. It was the 14 months. 14 months of someone I called my father, being guided, pressured, or manipulated into erasing me. And I hadn't seen it. I had been grieving, working, living my life, while someone had been quietly removing me from it. But I had also been watching, and I had kept every letter, every voicemail, every visit log from those final months. And I was not the only one who had. Mr. Holt closed the first folder. He placed it neatly to the side. Then he reached into his briefcase and removed a second envelope, thicker, older, sealed with a red wax stamp I recognized immediately. My father's personal seal, the one he used for documents he considered final and untouchable. My mother's hand stopped moving. There is one additional document, Mr. Holt said, filed separately, outside the revised will, and registered with the court 14 months ago, 1 week before the revision was signed. Victoria's smile faded. This is a protected letter of intent, an asset directive, authored by Mr. James Harlow and witnessed by 2 independent attorneys. It cannot be contested, modified, or revoked by any subsequent document. The room became very quiet. Mr. Holt broke the seal. He unfolded the pages slowly, 4 of them, dense with handwriting I knew better than my own. He began to read. To my daughter Claire, if you are hearing this, then the other version of events has already been presented to you. I want you to know that I saw it coming. I want you to know that I planned for it. I pressed my hand flat against the table to keep it steady. The revised will you heard today was signed under circumstances I did not fully control, but this document, filed first, filed freely, filed when I was still myself, holds legal authority over any revision made after the date of my diagnosis. My mother stood up. Gerald, this is not— Please sit down, Mrs. Harlow, Mr. Holt said without looking up. She sat. He continued reading. My father's private holdings, a separate portfolio he had built quietly over 20 years, never mentioned at family dinners, never disclosed to my mother, had been placed in a protected trust, the total value $47 million. Every cent directed to me. Victoria made a sound I had never heard from her before, something between a gasp and a word that didn't form. And at the very bottom of the last page, in my father's handwriting, one final line. She was always the one who was paying attention. I made sure she would be rewarded for it. My mother found her voice in the parking lot. She came through the glass doors fast, Victoria 2 steps behind her, both of them shedding the performance they had maintained inside. No more grief, no more composure, just the raw face of people who had expected to win and suddenly hadn't. "Claire," my mother's voice was sharp, "we need to talk about this." I turned around slowly. I had been waiting for this moment without knowing I was waiting for it. "There is nothing to talk about," I said. "Your father was not well when he wrote that. He was confused. We were protecting him." "From me?" I asked. My voice stayed level. "You were protecting him from me?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "I visited him every week for the last 2 years," I said. "I drove 4 hours each way. I sat with him when he couldn't remember what day it was. I read to him. I held his hand." I paused. "And you told him I had stopped coming, didn't you?" It wasn't a question. I had the visitor logs. The nurses had kept them. 3 of them had already agreed to provide statements. Victoria stepped forward. "You're being dramatic. This is a legal matter and—" "Yes," I said, "it is. And my attorneys agree." That stopped her. I looked at my mother, really looked at her for what felt like the first time in years. I didn't feel rage. I felt something sadder and cleaner. I felt the end of something I had spent my whole life hoping would become different. "I'm not going to fight you," I said quietly. "The document speaks for itself. The court will handle the rest." I picked up my keys. "I just want you to know," I said, turning back one last time, "that I spent 30 years trying to earn a place in this family. I'm done trying." I walked to my car. Neither of them followed. The legal process took 7 months. My mother's attorneys challenged the protected directive twice. Both challenges were dismissed. The independent witnesses held, the visitor logs held, the medical records confirmed that my father had been in full cognitive clarity when he filed his letter of intent. The $47 million trust was released to me in full. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I didn't call anyone. I sat in my apartment that evening with a cup of tea and my father's last letter, the real one, the handwritten one Mr. Holt had given me privately after the hearing, and I read it one more time. He had written, "Build something that lasts, not for them, for you." So that's what I did. I left the city. I bought a small piece of land near the coast. I started a foundation in my father's name, supporting girls in underfunded schools who ask too many questions and sit quietly in classrooms where no one notices them. I don't speak to my mother or Victoria. That door is closed, not in anger, but in peace. What I have now, no revised document can touch, no family meeting can remove it, no performance at a dinner table can outshine it. I have the truth. And I have what my father left me, not just the money, but the proof that someone saw me clearly, loved me honestly, and made sure I would be all right. That is the inheritance that actually matters. Sometimes the people who love you most say the least. They don't announce it at dinner tables or perform it for an audience. They plan quietly. They protect silently. They leave behind something that cannot be taken. And sometimes Not always, but sometimes, the person who was made to feel invisible is the one who was being watched over all along. If you have ever sat at a table where everyone was celebrated except you, this story was for you. Drop a heart if you believe silence is not weakness. Comment below, have you ever been the forgotten one in your family? Tell me. I read every single one. And if stories like this speak to something in you, subscribe. Every week, we tell the stories of women who were underestimated, overlooked, and written off. And every week, we show what happened next. Because the quiet ones, we were never really quiet. We were just waiting for the right moment.